For today's first five, I want to talk about something the Joe Biden campaign did. Former Vice President Biden, now running for president, had his staff send a letter this past week to the major networks in this country. He sent to top news channels and also to the top television media people, basically asking those officials, all these media officials, to no longer book Rudy Giuliani as a guest on their show. This is a presidential campaign on the Democrat side, who's basically everything on the Democrat side is supported by the overwhelming majority of mainstream media sources that support leftism. And this guy, Biden, is worried about letting these networks occasionally have Giuliani on. This is a letter addressed to heads of all the major news and cable networks, top news anchors. Two top Biden campaign advisors wrote the letter making the case that because they describe the interviews with Rudy Giuliani, President Trump's attorney, that it's just so unfair because he's saying things, especially about Biden and Hunter in the Ukraine, that his presence on the airwaves is editorially untenable. So what they went on to say, it's very interesting because these characters, two people in the Biden campaign, obviously realized someone's going to leak this. Someone's going to put out there, by the way, we heard from the Biden campaign, they're trying to say Rudy Giuliani should not be allowed to be interviewed or make statements on air because they don't like what Giuliani is pointing out about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and the Ukraine, and eventually be about China too. They actually use the expression, they're writing today, with grave concern that you continue to book Rudy Giuliani. And they actually say, the two top aides, one is Anita Dunn and the other one is Kate Bedingfield. More on this Anita chick in a moment. But they're saying, if you're going to continue to let Rudy Giuliani be on your news shows, then we want equal time. We want someone from our campaign to rebut what Giuliani is saying about the Biden campaign. People, I have to tell you, the level of arrogance this represents, that this, president-to-be, when he thinks he's the heir apparent to the presidency, thinks that he should get to tell the media in this country what they're allowed to do. Imagine, just imagine reverse. Imagine if two top aides to President Trump wrote letters to all the major news media and complained about the legions of people they put on every day that pile on Trump every single day, everything he does. Just imagine the mockery with which that letter would be greeted by all these news outlets. But they send this letter. One particular thing I think is they are saying that they want equal time for their person. But one thing is interesting. One of these campaign people, official Biden campaign people writing this letter, Anita Dunn, she actually said in 2009, she outed herself when she said she worked for the Obama administration at that time. And she said at that time she was a fan of, and they asked about her favorite thinkers, her favorite philosophers. Mao Zedong, among the most murderous of all leaders in all of human history. Mao Zedong and, oddly, Mother Teresa. Who can explain this person? But the arrogance coming out of the Biden team, and how much it tells you about how much the Biden team is getting underneath Giuliani is getting under Biden's skin, because Giuliani is saying things that really is helping the American people wake up to see how irrational and unfair and unjust this impeachment inquiry is. One more thing on Biden before we go to our clip. Also today, Peter Schweizer, the author of the book Secret Empires, I've been urging you to read. Peter Schweizer wrote an extremely detailed, footnoted book explaining all the corruption of high-level people in Washington, these kind of inner circle of the ruling elite class people. The Bidens are in there, the Kerrys are in there, and he's an equal opportunity critic. Peter Schweizer, author of Secret Empires, also included in that book Mitch McConnell and his wife Elaine Chao and their connections with China, and he describes them as very corrupt. So, he's not just a partisan hack. He was trying to expose corruption. But Schweitzer came out today essentially saying he's decided he's going to release the source materials he used in writing about the connection between the Biden family, Joe Biden and his son Hunter, and China. And it goes to this question of whether or not the Bidens wrongfully benefited from a deal with China. In fact, the deal they had with China, there was an acknowledgement on the part of the Chinese entity that they had chosen Hunter Biden to be involved because of his network in America. Just think what they must mean by the network. They mean because he's related to the vice president. In any case, Schweitzer has been ridiculed heavily these days because what he wrote about, what he laid out in his book, Secret Empires, is now coming back to the headlines. What he wrote about the Ukraine, what he wrote about China is now in the world's, everyone in the world's watching and knows it. And so he's actually not backing down in response to criticism. He's saying, actually, I'm going to put it out there. You can see what I saw and you can judge for yourself. So he's completely unafraid, going to put out the facts he has. I will tell you, we're about to go to the clip of Rudy Giuliani talking about Trump, about Biden and the Ukraine, and you can see why Giuliani is so effective and why he's driving the Biden campaign nuts. But I'll close with this idea before we get to that clip. The fact that the Democrat majority U.S. House is moving at record speed to move toward impeachment of President Trump based on a phone call that the transcript is out. Everyone's seen what was said. The whistleblower's complaint is out. It has a lot of shady aspects to it. But what Pelosi and truly the the cabal that really runs that party are saying to Joe Biden is, you need to get out of this race. If they thought Biden was their guy, if they thought Biden could win this and Biden was who they want, they wouldn't think of bringing this impeachment action against Trump over his nothing burger interaction with Ukrainian President Zelensky when they know it just was going to bring a firestorm, which it has, a firestorm of coverage over Biden's connections to the Ukraine and his son Hunter Biden and with China also. So Pelosi's pretty much saying Joe Biden's got to get out. He can be he's going to be kind of collateral damage in our impeachment effort because they really want Trump gone. So Biden is being booted out, in my view, by the Democrats. Now let's play, if you would please, the very wonderful producer Matt, play this little clip from Rudy Giuliani with Maria Bartiromo talking about Biden and the Ukraine.
Did President Trump hold back aid to Ukraine because he wanted them to investigate Joe Biden and his son?
Isn't the best answer to that the telephone conversation? Although the Democrats said that falsely before it came out, and Schiff pretended that he did in that ridiculously falsified thing that he did at the beginning. Look at the transcript. Is there any mention of military aid? No. Did he hold back the aid? No.
Did you work with other lawyers?
I have never, in my discussion.
Did you work with other lawyers, Victoria Tunsing, Joseph DeGeneva, to try to get dirt on Joe Biden?
No. I didn't work with anybody to try to get dirt on Joe Biden. The dirt on Joe Biden was handed to me by the Ukrainians, amazed that the FBI hadn't asked for this a year earlier, completely shocked and worried that our system of justice was flawed.
That, folks, says it all. That last segment, Giuliani is saying to Marie Bartiromo, he didn't even have to go digging for stuff about the corruption between Joe and Hunter Biden and the Ukraine. The Ukrainian government gave it to him. Now, I have to tell you, in closing out this first five today, if you read all sorts of sources, and which I do, I read all sorts of sources online, you can find the reliable left-wing sources just repeatedly determined to use language like, debunked in characterizing the corruption between the Bidens and the Ukraine and the Bidens and China. You can find all sorts of left-wing sources characterizing that corruption as debunked, as mythical, as, right-wing hysteria, no basis in fact. In fact, they're already at it right now, trying to say everything coming out about the Bidens, Hunter and Joe, and the Ukraine, and Hunter and China, just been thoroughly debunked, ridiculous, resurrecting out of desperation is the way they're describing the accusations. But the truth is, as Peter Schweitzer is showing America, as Rudy Giuliani is telling America, Biden is up to his eyeballs in, I don't know if you want to use the word collusion. He has been right over there in Ukraine, as he said on national television, twisting their arm, forcing them to fire a prosecutor investigating his son's company, and threatening on open television, threatened withholding aid. Biden is up to his eyeballs. He committed the crimes for which they are now trying to accuse Trump of in this impeachment process. So at the bottom line of it all, the Democrats are wishing to heck they can get Biden out of this race. And in my view, Biden will be out very shortly. He cannot withstand the scrutiny of his conduct. And that, my friends, is today's First Five.